Welcome to the December 13th, 2023 Planning Board meeting for the Town of Raymond. The Planning Board will come to order. The board does have a quorum, and we'll start roll call. You, Greg?
Greg Foster.
Robert O'Neill.
Ed Kranich. Mark Childs.
And via Zoom.
Kevin Woodbury.
This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, you have the right to hear everything that is being said and to look at all the exhibits that are presented. Please notify the chair if you are unable to see or hear. The board works from a published agenda. We'll be considering tonight's items in the following order. We have the approval of the minutes for the November 8th, 2023 meeting. We have a preliminary site plan review for the Allen Solar Project with also with a public hearing, followed by a workshop discussion for ordinance changes and any staff communications. In each instance, the burden is upon the applicant to demonstrate compliance with the provisions of the applicable ordinances or state law. All persons speaking, including representatives of the applicant and members of the public, are asked to stand at the microphone, state their name, address, and affiliation with the application. All persons speaking shall address the chair. Any conversations must be held in abeyance until after the board has formally adjourned. After the board votes on the merits of each application, it will prepare a written notice of decision because the notice of decision may substantially affect any appeals rights. And also as a matter of courtesy, the board asks that those attending the meeting with regards to a specific application not leave until the board has completed its discussion. Appeals from adverse decisions must be filed with Superior Court or as otherwise provided by law within 45 days of this board's decision. Also, to be certain that you preserve your individual rights to file any such appeal, you must be certain that board records evidences of your appearance this evening. There we go. So our first order of business is the minutes, which was a corrected copy sent out. If I really got from Wayne. The last corrected copy.
Yeah, move to accept the most recent November 8th minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passed. Okay. First done. Next order is our preliminary site plan review for the Allen Solar Project. I think we'll start off. I don't believe we have accepted the application yet. Is that correct, Jim? For reading your memo, it is, we have everything we can, everything that is in to accept, right? So our first order of business would be to move to accept the Allen Solar Project for a preliminary site plan review.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Everyone okay? All those in favor? All right.
Aye.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, Jim.
Thank you, board members. Tonight, Allen Solar Farm Project is before you. It is a 996 kilowatt ground-mounted solar generation farm located on 6.8 acres off Route 302. Located in the rural residential zone, and a portion of it is also in the limited residential recreation district, which is a shoreland zone. Overall, the property consists of 29.4 acres. This was before you last month, I believe, in some discussion. Since then, the board has conducted a site walk, and I know there were some comments that were generated via the public, which is also here this evening. We prepared a memo, but where this is a public hearing, it may be best to let the applicant present the project and then take public comment.
Sounds good. Our applicant is via Zoom?
Both.
No, both.
Roll.
My name's Dave Fowler, mainly solar. I'm the applicant, but Kirk is my engineer on record, and I'll actually let Kirk do the presentation on the actual physical site itself.
Okay.
But I'll be here for any questionings.
Thanks, Dave. Kirk?
Sandy, is there any way I can share screen and I can share the plans?
There certainly should be. Give me a minute to figure that one out. I always have a problem with that.
Okay.
Let's
see this before the meeting.
No, that's if it's for me to do it. All right, I'm gonna. There should be a place that I can make you the host for a minute, and it's not coming up again. Just did this to me one other time.
And I think it was me.
This is not giving me that option tonight.
Is it by clicking on participants?
On the three dots is where it's supposed to give me that.
Participants? Did you catch that, Sandy?
What?
By
You-
clicking on participants.
She probably can't hear you.
Yeah.
By clicking on to
Participant.
participants, you should be able to give him,
Okay, let me see where it says participants. Aha,
Far left.
let's try that. Aha, thank you. They changed
job.
these things on me. There you go. Now you should be able to share your screen, Kirk.
I sure can.
what are you doing next month?
Zoom teacher.
Yeah.
Zoom teacher.
Oh, you really? Oh.
We're always ready to learn.
You guys good? You can see my screen?
We can.
Ken.
Okay, great. First, just kind of give everybody the location within town where we are. So here is downtown 302, Raymond Marine. This is behind Raymond Marine. The blue lines here is the shoreland zone, and the yellow line is the project parcels. It's made of two parcels, one here and a small one here. Now I'll switch over to the plans. The project as proposed, the entrance will utilize the curb cuts currently at Raymond Marine. The access road would be constructed through the smaller lot owned by the Allens. The access road includes hammerhead turnaround, and the solar panels will be occupied in the northwest corner of the property lot. We're proposing that the solar field area will be surrounded by a fence, only the solar panel area. There will be a gate located at the entrance drive. To handle the stormwater, we're proposing 2 soil filters, one fairly large one that is located here that will take up, treat probably, I think around 60%, 80% of the impervious area, and then we have another small one here. Based on recommendation from the last meeting, we've included access to each of the soil filters. One is here, right off of the access road. The other is near the equipment pad, where it will come down this way so that maintenance can be, the equipment can access the soil filters and perform maintenance. There is a small equipment pad located right beside the hammerhead that will include an inverter and a transformer for the system. Power from the equipment pad will be below grade, follow along the road, the access road, and right at 302 there'll be 2 new poles that will need to be installed in order to make the point of interconnection to the circuit, CMP circuit. The road also, as recommendations or requirements from the fire department, we've included, since the last review by the planning board, we've added a fire lane. We've also added a 10,000 gallon fire cistern to fight any fires that may happen. and that cistern is connected to a dry standpipe system. So we're proposing to install a water main that will encircle the whole project and allow for the fire department to pull their pumper truck up, connect to that dry hydrant, and then have hose connections essentially circling the whole project area. Resources, we have designed this project to minimize any impact on the natural resources. As you can see, the road goes around wetlands. The green areas are wetlands that were identified. The purple are significant vernal pools. Those resources is what's kind of pushed us off into this northwest corner of the project parcel, so that all of these resources can be avoided. For the project, we will need to obtain a stormwater permit from the DEP and also a NERPA permit, NERPA PBR, because we are associated with this significant vernal pool. There is some terrestrial habitat that we'll be cutting, and we'll need to obtain a permit for that. Other than that, this is for everybody to kind of understand, this is a very small solar project. Most of the solar projects that people see being constructed right now are 4 or 5 megawatt projects that encompass about 19.9 acres. This one is just almost a megawatt, so it's about the quarter of size of most of the solar developments that are being constructed right now. And with that, I think it's pretty simple, straightforward, and I'll turn it back over to the board.
Thank you,
Switch
Kirk.
that back to me, Kirk.
Okay, so I'm gonna do something. You got it. I'll stop share.
Yeah.
Ah, wow, all right.
Boom.
There we go.
Should do it. Thank you much.
You got it.
Yeah, good trainer over there.
We can do either one. Do you want to open and do the public hearing and then have board comments? Or would you rather do board comments first?
Public hearing.
Public hearing? Okay. In that case, I will open the public hearing. Just the rules of the public hearing are that you need to go to the podium and state your name. We can get you the microphone, so you don't have to go to the podium. And just please remember that our job on the board is to enforce the ordinances, is to look at and make sure the project complies with that's in the ordinances. If it's other than, comments other than that are in the ordinance, you can certainly make them, but it's going to be the most beneficial comments to us are where you feel the project as presented does not meet the town's ordinances. And with that, if you could limit them to a reasonable amount of time, I'd appreciate it.
Can you give me 1 second yet, Bob? Kirk, even though you quit share, you still have to give it back to me as host.
Okay, participants.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just learned
When
that,
you go back
didn't
there, would
we?
you see if there's a
Yes.
mic underneath the podium, portable one?
And so what do I need? The 3 dots.
Yep, and then it
No.
should say make host.
There we go.
Thank you, sir.
You got it.
Yep, okay, thanks. Sorry.
He's gonna go grab it. You're good. No, it's fine.
Yeah, you're okay with that one. You're up.
Oh, and I'm up and we're ready. I'm Dave Hall. I am at 32 Pulpit Rock Road. I am an abutter to the project. I have been at the house, we have been at the house since it was built in 1982. And I've just handed a photograph of a stream located on my property that comes from the wetlands that are directly behind my house. I'm not sure if that was part of, we didn't see it as part of the plans or review that anyone drove down the road and looked for culverts to see how the water was making its way down to the pond, but just south of where the project will be a very significant, as well as uphill from my property. runoff from this property would be a significant problem heading down into the stream and then directly down into Thomas Pond and further on into Sebago Lake, Portland's water supply. Were there ever to be a fire or any other problem and chemical suppression were used, not only would it ruin our wells, but it would travel down my stream into Thomas Pond and on into Sebago Lake. This really feels like the wrong piece of property for this type of project, even though it's only 7 acres. It's having to accommodate so many different vernal pools and significant wetlands. It's really a watershed of our lake. It's a watershed of the larger surrounding Sebago Lake and public water supply. Having such an industrial project in, and so that photograph shows the one that has my house in it is where the stream actually goes all the way to the road and then on under the road. To the left of that is the wetlands behind the house that are directly below the project being proposed. Really feels like the wrong project for this piece of land. The neighbors and I have been meeting a couple times to sort of streamline what we're interested in. You know, other people will talk about property values and know that we all share those same concerns about property values and how this doesn't seem to be in the spirit of our town plan for how we want residential communities to be as well. But I'm going to leave more of that discussion to my neighbors to talk about. And I'm going to say thank you for your time.
Yep, well, before you go, Dave, just so I can orient the picture here.
Sure.
Coming out of the wetlands that's behind your house, this stream would be going to the right or the left side of your property, of your house. Is it coming down to the left side of your house, is that correct?
From this down, you know, the view we're seeing is down below, sorry, we're seeing down below in the center photograph, we're on Pulpit Rock Road.
Okay.
And the stream runs down the right side of my driveway, goes in a culvert.
Okay.
And the other two are it coming out the culvert down through the next property down towards the lake. The picture to the left of the one that has my house in it is what we see behind my property, which was not classified as a significant vernal pool, but just wetlands. But I would wonder if where it is a stream and travels directly down to the lake, if it really should have more of a significance than that.
I think it has to do with the critters that are hanging out in there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Bob Wallace, and I've lived in town since 1991 in the same property, which is 36 next to Dave. And I'd like to thank you for letting us voice our concerns. And I'm just going to read this because I'm not really good at this public speaking thing here. This project should be subject to the comprehensive plan vision statement for the town of Raymond, which I can read, but you probably know it already, as well as certain other ordinances that are currently in place. We know that there's unknown threats to water quality, and this project would change the aquifer in Thomas Pond and eventually Sebago Lake, as we've discussed earlier. This project is on the shoreland zoning edge, and it is listed, this watershed is listed as a water body at most risk, which I can't remember where I got that from. I just have down chapter 502. The comprehensive plan, there are sections regarding regarding land use statutes that goals regarding water quality, natural resources, wildlife habitat, community, and rural character are to be directed away from these areas. That section also states that rural character will diminish at an accelerated pace. This is from the town of Raymond, and I feel that this project is in line with the gold rush of solar installations occurring in Maine. And one question I do have is whether this project is actually trying to take that whole 29 acres plus the other section and make this an entire commercial or an industrial area. The land use ordinance as well as the town solar ordinance help define the comprehensive plan more clearly. Land use statute from 2003, 10.A.2.c focus on conserving the town's natural beauty related to surrounding sites. Land use statute 4-G.2 states a 50-foot buffer and visual screening from abutting residential boundaries is in a commercial zone, which that would be as soon as they started working on it, it would be a commercial entity. 10.A.2.e and 300-10.1b.5. The site plan should stabilize and improve property values, which I don't believe this is being done with this project. 300-9.1.g, conditional use will not depreciate the economic value of surrounding properties. 300-9.27-a, equipment to be installed in a safe manner with minimal impacts on the environment and to neighbors. So what would happen if the fire started behind my house, an electrical fire? How would they get there? Who would know it? If I'm asleep, my wife's asleep, who would know this? So it would, an electrical fire would be the worst case scenario, granted, but also in the plan 300-9.27-d, the planning board can ask for a visual assessment to be completed, which I feel that should be done because the visual assessment should also include the road, which you can see past my garage, in between my garage and my house, and you can be able to see that solar farm. 300-9.27.f, minimize or neglect glare. There's no discussion of that in the project that I saw. I could be wrong. We talked to the impact to the aquifer and watersheds. We need to know if there'd be a disturbed during construction, what's underneath these things to keep anything from coming off those and down into the aquifer. Also, as we discussed, I discussed on the site walk, 300-10.5-A.1, if the site includes a ridge or ridges that are elevated above the surrounding areas and provides scenic vistas, which that's open to debate also, for surrounding areas, special attempts can be made to preserve the natural habitat of the skyline of the ridge. The other aspect, and I don't know if somebody else is going to talk about this or not, is the noise. Did they do a noise study before they logged that? They've never logged that heavily. I've been there, they've logged it 3 times. They never logged it that heavily. And now Route 302 can be heard all the way down at the lake. And what will they do to address that the change in noise? And what will they do to address the added light pollution? I see lights that I've never seen before through the woods on 302. Again, the electrical fire is a big thing. And then I think Steve will talk about electromagnetic radiation. Also the habitat degradation for larger animals, the deers, the fox. They say they're going to put a foot underneath that's going to be open. How's a deer going to get under there? And if not, where are they going to push them to? Are they going to push everything down to the Cape? And we were just discussing earlier that it looks like they're trying to get an exception for wetlands. What was that, Dave? I can't remember what that's. It was just one of those circles on the map. It looked like there are 2 semicircles almost a B that is not open. But I think it says somewhere in there that there is, they're looking for an exception to be near the wetlands. Is that right?
On the third vernal pool, there should be a 250-foot clearance, and there seems to be about 50 feet before the beginning of their fence and their project. They're looking for an exception in where the road is and where the farms go.
Yeah, I certainly don't mind you blending in, but you,
Yeah, I'm all done. That's why I kind of went to.
yeah, because you
Yeah, okay.
got to say, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, okay. I'm all done. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Well, okay, Bob,
Do you have a question?
we probably will, but no, that's okay. Go ahead, you can, we'll get
Sorry,
back
I
to you.
apologize for not being at the podium when I was speaking. What
Right.
we were looking at and what Bob was speaking about was at the third vernal pool, there is a shaded arc. There is a circle around all of the vernal pools of 250 feet.
Yep.
And I believe his name is Kirk, was saying that they would be looking for an exception in where the road would be impacting that, and the corner, southeast corner of the project itself would be, the project would be a third, the third of the project would be within that 250 feet in addition to the road.
Okay,
From that third vernal pool in purple, a little deeper behind my house.
okay,
And then if my wetland were considered a more significant wetland and given a 250-foot buffer, it would put it all the way into the middle of the Wallace's property and take over more than half of this property. It seems like there is very significant impact on wetlands and watershed.
okay, thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Are you ready? Are you coming up? Should I bring a microphone over?
Coming up? All right.
They're coming
We're
up.
ready for you.
Hi, Steve Danzig. I am at 38 Pulpit Rock Road. Okay, so Steve Danzig, 38 Pulpit Rock Road. We bought our home there in 1998 and been there ever since. Plan on being there for a while yet. So I'm just gonna read what I wrote. I'm not much of a public speaker like Bob and the rest of them are. So I just wanted to highlight a few pieces of information I found while trying to research what comparable studies have been done around solar installations in and around residential areas to include any confirmed or suspected issues with property values declining as a result of solar farm installations. What I did find was very interesting, but unfortunately only speculative in nature due to the fact that most solar farms are built in large open spaces with flat terrain in rural or agricultural areas. Whereas the solar farm being proposed in Raymond will be set in a forest of trees on uneven terrain between two rural residential neighborhoods, making it extremely difficult to properly evaluate the effect of the installation on the neighboring property values. However, there are some conclusions that can be reasonably drawn. Rich Kirkland, who's been working in real estate and solar appraisals for well over 10 years, provides expert witness testimony in local community jurisdictions as well as state regulatory boards. His work has been accepted by the North Carolina Superior Courts as competent material evidenced on a number of occasions. He's provided expert witness testimony in hundreds of times across over 20 states in hundreds of different jurisdictions. He regularly addresses the question, would this hurt property value if this were built? And performs analysis to make that determination. Kirkland has prepared property value impact studies for solar developers in 19 states, performing nearly 100 matched pair analysis on properties. He believes that issues can arise if a solar development is situated too close to a property, if nothing is done to conceal it from view, or if there isn't enough landscaping to hide the panels, such as when the elevation of the land being considered for the project provides no opportunity to conceal it from view. The proposed, did you give them the picture?
Oh, no.
Can I give you guys a picture?
Yeah, sure.
Might make what I'm saying a little easier. That's.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, well, there's a eloquently written piece by my wife on there as well. The proposed solar farm in Raymond will be installed on uneven terrain in the woods 180 feet from our home, where there will be no way to adequately conceal the view of the solar panels, not only from the first floor of our house, master bedroom, kitchen, screen porch, living room, but also from our 2 second-floor bedrooms, as well as our in-law apartment above the garage. In addition to that appraiser, in a policy research project done at the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas in 2018, the project director indicated that 70% of respondents believe these installations will decrease property values. A public opinion survey on solar facilities by the Idaho National Laboratory found that 43% of respondents in the Southwest United States believed that a view of a large-scale solar facility would decrease the value of their home. In the same survey, 21% of respondents indicated that a buffer of less than a mile would be acceptable between the solar facilities and residential areas, while 26% believed the buffer should be between 1 and 5 miles, and then so on and so forth, each person wanting it further and further away from where they resided. In addition to the above research, various media outlets have provided evidence of a perceived impact on home prices by homeowners. News articles from California, North Carolina, and Tennessee, for example, identify communities that express displeasure over solar installations proposed or constructed near their homes. Some common concerns over proximity to solar farm include changes to property values due to the solar installation's appearance, safety, or health concerns, or changes to the environment such as water runoff or displaced wildlife, like we've already heard. As an add-on to that, we have a game trail that's about at the end of our property, right between the abutter's property and back where the solar farm is going to, where it's being proposed. And the deer have now changed their game trail to my backyard. So it's very, obviously we know where we live. We get all kinds of stuff in the yard, but it's a very noticeable difference now that the woods are gone. In September 2020, University of Rhode Island released property value impacts of commercial scale solar energy in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. They came up with the following conclusions from this study. They studied the states of Massachusetts and Rhode Island, which have high population densities and ambitious renewable energy goals. We observed over 400,000 transactions within 3 miles of a solar site. The results suggest that houses within 1 mile depreciate following construction of a solar array. We find substantially larger negative effects for properties within 0.1 miles and in properties surrounding solar sites built on farm and forest lands. This suggests that property prices for homes lying within 0.1 mile from a solar installation fall by about 7%. And they did give an actual number which calculates into about a $330,000 home. Price would fall by about 7%. We hypothesized that prior land use may affect property value impacts, specifically houses in proximity to farms and forests that are developed into solar may depreciate more than houses in proximity to a brownfield or capped landfill. All right. Almost done. University of Rhode Island researchers speculated that if solar panels could not be seen, then home value may not be lowered. In June of last year, the Center for Economic Policy Research researchers published wind turbine, solar farms, and house prices. These researchers found that the following based on a comparison of homes near solar farms in the Netherlands. Further results indicate that solar farms seem to lead to a decrease in house prices within 1 kilometer. So that was, to make the comparison, it was very similar to the Massachusetts, Rhode Island study. From independent research, one might conclude that the adverse property value effects of solar farms are most likely when a solar facility is developed on forest or farmland, most acute for homes within 0.1 miles, 528 feet, in case you were wondering, of a solar farm where a decline in property values was documented. Adverse effects extend out to other nearby properties farther away than that. These excerpts are not conclusive evidence as they fail to capture the essence of the location of this project being proposed. As I researched, I have been unable to locate any research done on a comparable project to this one. One done in a rural residential area situated among a forest in a watershed next to a lake within that proximity. The majority of these cases have been in the South and Midwest, covering farmlands and larger forest development that weren't near bodies of water. For this project to move forward in this location will set a precedent in Raymond, I feel, in the Lakes region and in Maine, that most of us who move to this area for its natural beauty believe is not worth risking. I believe this will have a deleterious effect on the property values given what I've learned to date. Raymond is in the heart of the Lakes region and of vacation land. It's a wonderful environment to raise our children, all 3 of them. Some of them have been up here as Eagle Scouts as well. I know all of my neighbors and everyone, we're all for protecting the environment since we enjoy living among the trees and the lakes. But in my opinion, this is not the right place for this project and will set a dangerous precedent if allowed to move forward on the currently proposed site. Thank you. Any questions? Questions about the pictures?
I think you covered the property value.
It's
Oh, sure. So, sorry, could you?
Steve, in your research, did you find anybody that said that there were no changes in the value because of a local solar farm, or actually increased the value, or all of them negative?
I did not see any that said it increased the value. I did find some where it was, kind of 50-50, being that there had been, and this was out towards the Midwest, where there was probably a dairy farm or, a slaughterhouse, something of that nature, of a large scale, that was replaced with a solar farm. So the smell was gone if it was a dairy farm or a slaughterhouse. So it was, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. The people were happy not to have the smell, but maybe equally as unhappy to have that there instead. So it's just, this, by all accounts, this is a small project, but in the space it's being put, it's a large project. And it, I did speak with, I have a realtor that I work with frequently, and she, she really doesn't have any information, because admittedly, many realtors don't really have a very good handle on solar, solar installations being in some proximity of a residential area, because it just doesn't happen. They haven't run into it yet.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
Absolutely. What do you need?
We have a, yeah.
I'll stand. I think it'll be easier.
No, that's fine.
To balance.
It's fine with us.
Okay. All right.
No sense.
Okay.
George going to PT. She's got brand new parts.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Can you do that? Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you. That's lovely. Thank you. You're sweet.
Should be all set. Yeah, should be.
Okay. So you have the picture. So.
You need a mic closer.
Yep, we got it.
Hello?
You got it, Bill?
You're good.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so first I'm just gonna thank you everyone for being here tonight, because we're close to the holidays, and I'm actually, instead of at my daughter's Christmas concert, I'm here because I think it's that important, and my concerns about where the solar farm is being
Excuse
proposed.
me, you got to start off with your name and.
Oh, my name is Jennifer Danzig.
Okay.
I live at 38 Pulpit Rock Road. We bought the house from the Populardos in 1998.
Okay, thank you.
And
You bet.
Jennifer, could you hold that a little bit closer?
Sure. Okay. So, as I said, I'm not at my daughter's Christmas concert because I'm here because I want to talk about concerns. I've done extensive research. This entire bag, all of this is reams and reams of paper full of research, and could go on for hours. But in the interest of time, I'm just going to touch on a few key issues, all of which relate to the close proximity of the proposed solar farm to our rural forested residential neighborhood, which is located between the Thomas Pond and Sebago watersheds. The solar panels would be a mere 180 feet from the back of our home and not much farther from our neighbors' homes. As such, I have a lot of concerns over safety. Safety to humans, to animals, to the land, to the watersheds, to our lakes, to our property values, and to our way of life here in Raymond. Basically, I'm going to kind of summarize what Bob started with, addressing the comprehensive plan and all of the things that you guys are responsible to follow, as Mr. O'Neill said in the beginning, and that we sort of delved into more detail. And I'm just going to kind of talk about the safety concerns that I have.
It's the ordinances that we are interested in, the comp plan. The ordinance come out of the comp plan. We don't have a recent comp plan that's being worked on right now. So the old, which I think is like 10 or 12 years old, comp plan is what these ordinances have come from. So your comments would be most helpful for us if they are directed to the ordinance and not directed to the comp plan, because we have no impact at all on the
Well,
comp
I think
plan.
Bob spoke of the ordinances, didn't you?
Yes,
He did.
So he
Yeah.
spoke of the
Right.
ordinances. So, and these is just more detail on what he cited in those ordinances, just sort of drilling down.
Okay.
So the research that I've done says that a safe distance to live from a solar farm is at least 1.2 miles away. And their proposal has a row of solar panels installed 180 feet from my bedroom door and 50 feet from the fire pit in our backyard where our family plays and sits and spends a lot of the summer. Solar power produces electromagnetic radiation that can affect the health of nearby residents, including vision problems, headaches, anemia, and behavioral issues, especially in children as they're still in their growth stage of life. The studies are too scarce as to be conclusive about whether or not solar farms are carcinogenic, but there is some disagreement between health and scientific organizations over this, and they want to do more research. So I sort of say it's akin to the power lines, where people didn't know it was dangerous to live under power lines until they did. And that's what scientific and medical organizations are saying. Some are saying we think it's safe enough, and others are saying the studies are too inconclusive. We're not sure it's safe enough. So should it be discovered that there are health effects, it would not only harm our health, but also property values, right? We could be like the next Flint, Michigan, by having a solar farm installed so close to a residential neighborhood if the recommendation is 1.2 miles and this is 180 feet. On hotter days, solar panels get above 140 degrees. The closer that the panels are to buildings, such as neighboring houses, the more electromagnetic radiation the houses absorb. Again, 180 feet from where my children live. In addition to the human residents, risk to wildlife includes loss of habitat, stormwater infiltration and runoff that can affect soil erosion and plant species that animals rely on. And they also disrupt migration corridors, which my husband talked about. Also, many birds are often found dead near solar farms due to the heat and pollutants emitted from the solar panels that birds are sensitive to, and having an abnormal amount of dead birds in the area, again, 180 feet away from my home, and having could bring disease to us as well as to our pets. The inverters, DC combiner boxes, connectors, and cables are the most common places where solar fires start. Electrical shorts, flying sparks, extreme heat buildup inside the equipment are some of the leading causes. Where the solar farm abuts our property, we have woods and leaves ripe for catching fire within 180 feet from our home. If there were to be a fire requiring chemicals instead of waters to extinguish it, that would be an environmental concern as well. And if there's a heavy storm, we're seeing more tornadoes as climate change happens in Gorham, in Casco, et cetera, in the surrounding areas. If a heavy storm damaged a solar panel, then the harmful toxins that are encased in the solar panel could be released into the soil and groundwater, which could contaminate our well, in addition to the aquifer, Dingley Brook, and into the Thomas Pond and Sebago Lake. Since we're between both watersheds and all of, if you read Raymond Waterways Protection, our WPA just came out with their new thing saying because all of the water is connected, anything that happens in one location spreads to all of the locations within Raymond, including Sebago Lake, which is the Portland Water District water. And then I'm also concerned about the fact that Raymond sits on a shelf of granite. So with clearing, grading, and road building, because of the granite, there could be an increase of radiation in the air and water. Again, only 180 feet from my house. Other issues are that my husband touched on it, the topography of the proposed site is hilly forested terrain. So the acres of trees between Route 302 and Pulpit Rock Road will all be clear, but the area is not graded uniformly according to the plan. So rather than the panels all being in a row, like Arlington Cemetery, headstones, like like solar panels are going to be up on this hill, down here, like just littered all over the forest in the back of our home. Solar farms convert DC into AC power to distribute electricity to local grid. This conversion process creates noise pollution. In addition to the noise pollution caused by the solar farm itself, we also have the clearing of all the woods that were a natural barrier to 302. Accumulation of dust, bird droppings, and atmospheric particulate matter, dry leaves gets deposited on the solar panel, reduces the capacity of the panel, so they frequently have to clean them, requiring regular maintenance, which can be noisy and disruptive. And depending on the cleaning process, whether it's water or chemicals, it can also be potentially hazardous to the environment. Solar panels reflect light and create glare, which can be a nuisance for the residents and even a safety hazard to pilots and birds. We have a lot of water planes in our area that fly over our home. And so the glare of the solar farms could be dangerous to those pilots as well as the birds. Their plan says that a wooded buffer would surround the solar farm, specifically the existing topography and the forested areas. But I'm wondering if they're relying on the woods on our property as that required buffer, because they've already cut down all the trees on their property up to our property line. Furthermore, our house is zoned for horses. I have 2 of them that are boarded, but when they retire, we plan to clear our land to bring them home and put them in the backyard. So if I remove the trees from my property to create a pasture for those horses, there would be no wooded buffers anymore since they've cleared all of their trees up to my property line.
Have they cleared since we've done the site walk? No, so those, okay, that's what I thought.
Right, but where you see those pink ribbons, those are my trees. Beyond that is the open space.
No, they have not, they have not cleared the buffer. And they're not going to clear the buffer.
I thought you measured the...
But the buffer is on their land.
The buffer's on there.
The flags went all the way up
To their land,
to their land.
which marked their property line.
Well, the flags.
What property line did we
Fence
measure?
line.
The fence line, excuse me.
We measured to our line,
We measured to our line.
30 feet past them.
Right.
Still trees in, but they have cut some of them from that property,
Right, but,
not all.
okay, well, it's...
I just wanted to make sure we're,
Okay, it's a big open space. I mean, there's a lot fewer trees than
Yes.
there were. So, also too much electricity close to our residents can damage electronics, radios, TVs, computers, and ham radios. Dave Hall discussed the environmental, so I'm just going to say that, constructing the solar facility requires clearing, grading, results in soil compaction, potential alteration to drainage channels, and increased runoff and erosion. Use of or spills of chemicals at solar facilities, like dust suppressants, dielectric fluids, herbicides, could result in contamination of surface or groundwater. The construction and operation of the facility generates particulate matter, which can be a significant pollutant, particularly in nearby areas classified as Class 1 under prevention of significant deterioration regulations, such as wilderness areas and national parks. The clearing and use of large areas for land for solar power facilities can adversely affect native vegetation and wildlife in many ways, including loss of habitat, interference with rainfall and drainage, and direct contact causing injury or death. Impacts are exacerbated when the species affected are classified as sensitive, rare, threatened, and endangered. I also have a concern about the water runoff, where this isn't a uniform sort of solar site where all of them are at the same height and distance, et cetera, where the terrain is choppy and they're just going to be throwing them. Like now you're going to have water running off of them. And, you know, whenever it rains, it pools back there because it is a wetlands area. My husband talked about property values, so I'm not going to really touch on that other than to say that it can have an impact on home prices. I did talk to 2 realtors, one of which is a famous one locally and up the entire East Coast. And she believes that properties immediately adjacent to the solar farm may see a negative impact. Another realtor believes that issues with reduced property values can arise if a solar development is situated too close to a property. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So, in summary, I don't think that the solar farm should be placed on land already zoned for rural residential use and/or shoreland limited residential recreation district. I don't think it makes sense to reclassify the forested land situated between our 2 residential neighborhoods as commercial use. It sets a bad precedent for the Lakes region. In fact, the Maine Audubon and Nature Conservancy has put together a solar siting toolkit aimed at steering development away from high-value natural resources and agricultural lands. The land, the forest, the farmland, the vegetation, the soil can be forever destroyed. Industrial solar projects are typically 30 to 40 years. They'll remove trees, brush, root balls prior to installation. Grading, pile driving, blasting, electric cable trenching, and road construction will compact the soil. Stripping and compaction remove topsoil, destroys healthy soil organisms, and allows for invasion of exotic plants that choke out native species. Solar projects should not be placed near wetlands, rivers, streams, tributaries to avoid immediate damage to water quality and possible contamination, ecological disasters. Uncontrolled runoff of water and topsoil is well documented byproduct of solar site development. Massive increase in watershed sedimentation impacts all downstream rivers and estuaries. Water contamination doesn't stop with the end of construction because of all the trees and plants. Long-term runoff, and local municipalities such as Raymond usually don't have adequate resources to monitor construction and stormwater violations. And even when properly monitored, site developers have no problem paying fines, and there's no effective check on environmental damage. And the watershed resource consultants for the Allen Solar Farm stated in the plan that they did not review or take into account the town's ordinances regarding the alterations to the natural resources proposed in the plan. Solar farms destroy wildlife habitat. The perimeter fencing will restrict movement of wildlife in the area. Removal of vegetation will impact bird population and other wildlife. Solar power generation is very inefficient when looking at the amount of land consumed. Its inefficiency argues for proper sitting on brownfields, industrial areas, and commercial and residential rooftops, not on forested rural residential land. Solar farms could undermine the local residents' property values, not just because of the aesthetic, but also because of the possible health and/or environmental risks. I already talked about that, but it's sort of common sense that people move to Raymond to buy beautiful homes and vacation homes because of the natural beauty of the forest and lakes. I don't think anyone wants to look into the woods and see solar panels going up and down the hills. When a local community has clearly expressed concerns and opposition, I believe that you should vote to reject the solar farm in our rural residential area, since we all oppose it. And while I believe that alternative energy sources are important, I think there's an appropriate place for them to maximize the benefit to the environment and the community. And building one in the middle of the woods behind houses in a rural residential neighborhood surrounded by forest, streams, and lakes is not an appropriate place. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions? As I said, I have reams of research and studies and paperwork.
It's okay. All right. Is there anyone else?
The bus will be here shortly.
Yeah.
Mr. Wallace, could you just jump up there for a second with your notes? I did not get all of the references that you referenced in our ordinances, and I just want to make sure.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Let's see, where am I here? Land use statute, and the earliest one, or the latest one I could find is 2013, 10.A.2.C, focus on conserving the town's natural beauty relating to surrounding sites. Then there was 4.G.
You given a bunch of 30.9s?
30.9s?
I thought that's what I heard.
300s.
Excuse me,
300s from
yes.
the plan
Right.
itself. The comprehensive plan, yeah.
Oh, that you were referencing the comprehensive plan.
No, that's our
Yes.
site ordinance. The 300s are.
300s are usually our ordinance.
Oh, maybe that's that's the land use. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm sorry. That's the land use. The other one in that's land use also. That's the 50-foot.
Yeah, land use is what I'm looking for.
Okay, use. I just have 4.G.2 states a 50-foot buffer visual screening from abutting
Yep.
residential
Okay.
boundaries in a
Yep.
commercial zone.
Okay, I just want to make sure I was. I got it. Thank you.
That's it.
Commercial zone, though.
No, it's not.
It's not. But once they put a commercial project in there,
It doesn't change the zone.
it doesn't change the zone.
Yep.
Oh, that's too bad. It's not what I wanted to hear. Okay, so how can they put a,
I did not invite you back up there for more questions.
okay.
No, I'm only kidding. Stay. It is because it's an accepted use in our zone. Our ordinances have it as an accepted use in the within the zone, which is why it's allowed.
Okay, Dave's gonna come up and talk about that.
All right, opened up.
Thank you. Last comment as we talk about that.
I'm going to hold you to that.
I believe the purpose of an ordinance like that would be to not bar somebody who owned 7-8 acres of land, who wanted to put 30 or 40 panels, take care of their home, and generate a little profit from it. I don't think the purpose of putting an ordinance into our town plan like that, or allow within our town plan to fill up a maximum space of acreage right next to all your neighbors. And that's what this project really is.
Good point.
You know, filling up the amount of space that you can possibly fill up within the space next to your neighbors. I believe that putting an ordinance like that into our town plan would be for the purpose of not having to say to somebody, I'm sorry, I know you want to put in an acre of solar field on your property, but we just don't allow it in a residential zone. I know you have 10 acres and your neighbors aren't going to see it, it's not going to obtrude anybody. I think that would be the purpose for putting a plan like that into our, allowing it in residential, not to fill it up so it runs 100 feet behind a neighbor's house. Thank you, that was the point.
Thanks. Thank you, Bob.
We all set?
All set.
Terrific, thank you.
Oh, thanks, yeah. Anybody else? Well, almost got it down, too.
Well, should I respond now, or?
No.
We'll give you your moment.
Yeah. Anybody else would like to talk about the project? Okay. Done. Thanks, Jim. All right.
I have a quick question. I don't know if I need the microphone.
Well, you would, but
Okay. So prior to them proposing the solar farm, we didn't have a solar farm ordinance or law on the books.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we do.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, we already have, we have one solar project
Been in here
approved.
since 2022,
Yeah.
Okay, but they filed in 2021.
not for this project.
No.
In the state, that's what. This project came in recently. This did not come in.
2 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's another project came in 21 that has been approved.
Yeah, there was another solar farm that, not related to them, that came in 20.
21, right? 22?
Yeah,
21
21 or 22, but that was before.
21. It was before we had an ordinance.
It's before we had an ordinance.
Yeah. That's why we created one.
That's why we created this.
That's what I saw online.
Okay. That's, okay.
All right.
Can I ask
Board-
where that one is?
It's not built, but
It is not built, it's been approved. It's,
just up the street,
Webb's Mills Road. Yeah.
Dens Drive,
yeah, it's about a mile that way into the woods.
and that's a 5 megawatt farm.
I don't remember.
Ish.
Is that
Yeah, a little under, I think.
4.9.
4 point?
Yeah.
Because it was go over 5 for some reason?
Yeah.
And that's behind the school, you said?
I'm
No.
sorry?
It's behind the school?
No. Oh, well, kind of. It's beyond, well beyond the school.
Yeah.
It's by the Rand's property, yes.
yes.
White Horse Farm or whatever the road is.
Dens Drive is what actually access.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
You want to allow the applicant time to respond, or does the board want to have discussion? We also have site walk discussion that we should have.
Yeah, I just want a minute here to,
I know, I get you.
I am going to try to run through here and to make sure I've captured what some of the concerns were. I'm also going to try to answer some of those things. If I answer them incorrectly, Jim will jump in and tell me, right?
I'll do my best, sir.
I think one of them was already answered. Is it's the project is not being built in an industrial area, and the project is not considered an industrial project. So it is being proposed to be constructed in a zone which is a authorized use for that zone, and does not change that zone once it is if it is produced. There were a couple of questions, a couple of things, particularly I got down from Jennifer. Water runoff is a major concern. It's handled both by us and by the DEP. And you might have caught from Kirk's presentation that there are stormwater basins, treatment plants that will capture that water and treat it before it does in fact leave the property. So, in a sense, and you'll find the board is extremely concerned about runoff, but we have always found in many of these projects that we've looked at, as far as home construction, is the water that leaves the property after treated is actually better than the water that leaves the property with no treatment, and that's
Until the system fails.
well, I mean that's anything, right? I got a note here for noise, which a couple of people have indicated. There's the buffer. Let me move that up to here. Is indicated the buffer as it is presented by the applicant meets the requirements of the ordinance. Now, whether or not it's sufficient or not is something we could talk about. But I just want to let you know that the buffer as presented does meet the requirements for the ordinance for the construction. Stormwater impact. There is for if this is right, Dave. There's nothing that we can do about changing whether or not a vernal pool is designated. How a vernal pool is designated, that is done outside of our purview. You might be able to, or you could, I guess, get an outside opinion upon that. Cumberland Water District, Cumberland County Water District, I think has done that once or twice for us in the past. But as of now, it is what it is.
And the DEP hasn't been in yet?
Oh, no, it's the last stage. Yeah. Well, it's,
yes.
yes and no, right?
Yes, and the issue with the vernal pool is the only time of year that those can be assessed is during the breeding season, which is between end of March to early May.
Let's see. Property value was mentioned a few times. We can talk about that.
Glare was a concern.
Glare, thank you. The project glare and visual from the property. I don't mean to cut down all of your presentations into a couple of bullets, but that's why I'll put it out. Have I missed anything that somebody has presented as far as key aspect?
Safety and health risk.
Well, the safety and health risk, I mean, that's, you'll find that, as far as I can know, I mean, you're not going to get EMI out of a solar project. Just, you're not going to get it.
It doesn't make, DC power does not generate EMFs.
Solar farms should be 1.2 miles from residences.
No, I mean, I have not done that in that,
180
but.
versus a mile is a big difference.
And I guess in that pile of stuff that you've got a reference on there, we probably would like to see that as to where that reference is coming from.
Noise.
Yeah, got you for noise. So just, go ahead, I'm sorry.
In the last, how much of...
He's going to need a mic.
Sorry, Bill.
Sorry. And the last, as you were looking at bullet points, how much of the 250-foot buffer around the
Vernal pool.
that third vernal pool.
And that is, just for clarification, that's not this board's review, that would be the main DEP. But under their statute, I believe they're allowed, and Kirk and Dave can chime in, I believe they're allowed 25% of that 250-foot buffer could be disturbed with permitting.
With permitting.
I'll let those gentlemen speak, because I know that is something that they have addressed with the DEP. But it's, again, that's not our purview to discuss or regulate the vernal pools. That's the main DEP.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also have something from the main DEP. It's 38 MRS 484. Adequate provision development should fit harmoniously into the existing environment, which is probably outside of your scope.
Yeah, I'm not sure what 384 represents in the DEP articles, but chapter. But
Yeah, that's all right. That's the DEP's problem.
Yeah, you put in MRS
Under site location.
484, I think
I don't think this project falls under that, but.
Okay, I
But
just thought I'd
nope,
bring it up.
nope, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Every little bit helps.
All right. Dave, do you want to,
Yeah, I think.
as the applicant, would you like to discuss some of these issues?
Again, Dave Fowler, mainly solar applicant. I live in Casco. I've been there since 1990, I believe. I've been in development my entire life as a home builder in this area. And then 15 years ago, I did get into utility scale wind power, where things can get really hot. I worked on the Mars Hill project, the Lincoln project, the Danforth project, the Bingham project, and then also some off near Aurora. Property values came up in all of those projects. There have been and Steve was right. I mean, there's no conclusive evidence, even on utility scale wind, because there are so many variable market conditions. There was no way for any of these realtors doing these studies to like pull out just, that particular impact. There's no question that it can change who decides to buy your house, because there's a lot of people in favor of these types of renewable and don't mind them in their backyard. There's some that aren't. So it's really, it can change it, but there was never any conclusive evidence. We continued to have valuable homes built under these wind farms in Mars Hill, in Lincoln. I mean, progress kept moving forward. But again, I don't have any evidence either in regards to property values. And that's on a utility scale, not on these smaller scales. So I will say that in the 35 years of being in the development, I like to think that my character runs forward. I've never had a violation from DEP. I've always felt that I've tried to do a good job in construction. I know Greg, I know Jim, I know Alec, and I know Sandy from Casco Planning Board days. I was on the Casco Planning Board for over 20 years, so they can also speak to my character. Regarding, I'll let Kirk answer in regards to DEP stuff with the vernal pools, but there was one thing that did come up from the visual. I mean, we're more than happy to talk about what the type of screening on the fencing. I'd be more than happy to talk about that, whether they'd like screening so that they can't see these. The other thing that we had introduced that's in the plans is not, it's a best management practice. It's not a requirement, which is leaving the bottom of the fence 6 inches off the ground. And if we were to move forward, I'm not sure if that would be a good thing with the Danzig's pets. That would be up to you guys. I'd be happy to push that fence down to the ground in the event that this does get built, that you know that they can't get in there, as well as anybody else's pets. But we met in the woods there, and I met your pets, so that just came to mind. It's not a requirement unless it's a requirement by the no, I didn't think so. So that's just considered best management practice, and it's really more for the larger scale projects that are 500 acres or more, where there's more terrestrial and a small habitat moving through.
Dave, while you're on the fence, is the barbed wire now no longer an issue? Is that gone?
Yeah, no, that's gone. We're going to use the agricultural fence. Okay. It'll be wooden posts with just a similar to the ones you can see them. That's really what everybody's using. It's passed the electrical code test, so that's why we're willing to go down to that. Okay. Initially, that was part of the electrical code requirements in the state. In electrical code, I think it was brought up there. DC. I think Ed brought it up. DC doesn't carry an electrical magnetic fields of anything that's it's negligible. From a fire safety, I can say from working in over 100 communities in the state of Maine that Wayne is probably the most thorough fire safety inspector there is, and you guys have by far, hands down, the best fire suppression system design for this project in the state of Maine, and I can say that conclusively. And it may even provide better safety for the neighbors with that installed. I mean, they'd have to come in through the backyard in a fire if there was one in their homes, but he could actually access that if he really had to. Mm-hmm. Because I think we put gates for him on all four sides of the project as requested. What else? Am I missing anything?
I don't think anything that you could answer. What about the noise?
So the noise. So the inverters don't make enough noise to trigger.
I think it's more the noise from 302, Dave.
Yeah, for sure. 302 is the noise.
Yeah.
When I found out Scott was going to cut that, I asked him not to because I knew I was coming in for this. That was not related to me. Scott decided to cut his property regardless of this.
He can do that.
Yep, yeah, right. That's right. So unfortunately, that's where that noise is coming from. From the project itself, I don't think you're going to see any noise. The inverters do make a sound when they're running, but that's during the daytime because the sun isn't this isn't producing power in the nighttime. So there can be a very small hum, but it's well below the DEP standards, which I believe the town goes by as well, right? That you don't have any specific standards other than that. So, which would be I think 45 at night, but yeah. Yeah.
It's loud now, and you can hear it down at the lake.
Yep.
And the lights. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
you can see light now.
Well, I don't know if that, then screening the fence might help, putting a fabric on the fence might help that too.
Yeah.
So how is the fence gonna work in a two-story home? Because I'm looking out my bedroom, or
I-
I'm looking out my in-law
Yeah, I
apartment.
can't hide it from everything.
And the high ridge.
And the ridge, like, you're gonna have stuff going like this, because you're not
They
doing
can't
it
hear that on the,
flat.
she's
Yeah.
talking to them.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I'm sorry, you can't,
Oh,
yeah, we can't have the side conversations. You would need a microphone, but, and you're gonna have to shoot your questions this way. with-
well, from the visual aspect, I can't hide it
Right,
completely. It's just, it's not, and I think, from a visual aspect, there could be worse things. It could be a mobile home park put in there. I think some people would consider it not as bad. Some people would. It's to each his own, so.
Dave, while you're up there, and maybe, or Kirk can drive in, and I'm going to jump to one of the questions that Mike has, who's not here right now, but he felt that there was a kind of a natural berm that ran along the back of the property, back of the project, that would move the project further away from both the Wallace and the Danzig, did I pronounce that right? Danzig property, and actually supply kind of a natural buffer for their property. Is that an option? It would, I'm assuming, if you didn't do anything else, it's going to cut down your arrays.
Yeah, Kirk, are we right at the max of what we're allowed to do on that clearing in the vernal pool?
No, we have a little bit more. So the plan says we are at 18.6%, and Jim was 100% correct that it was 25%. Per NERPA rules, we need to maintain 75% of the forest canopy, which means you can cut 25%.
So that's one place that we could shift some. I don't
Okay.
know if it'll get we'll have to look at the contours to quite understand. I don't know if Kirk, if you follow that, those contours to me, they just gradually go down from the Danzigs and the Wallaces into that.
They do gradually go down, but there was, if I remember correctly, there was kind of a natural, not a hill, but a natural
Near
kind
the
of,
property line.
a natural berm,
Yeah.
that was there.
Yeah, we can take a look at it. I mean, obviously, we're not going to cut into that, so the fence would be up on top of that too.
No, I think you would cut into that. As I understood it,
arrays.
you were going to cut into it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the arrays aren't. To Jennifer's point, we're not grading the land. So I mean,
Right.
it would be posted on it. They would be sitting on top of it.
Exactly.
Well, we'll take a look at that.
Bob, am I right? Oh, I can't talk to you because, could you just give me a nod? Am I right in that there is a berm behind your property?
My property.
Half of your property, right?
My property,
Okay,
yes.
all right,
I'm not looking towards the berm that's closer to 302.
Yeah.
right, okay.
There's kind of a saddle between the two properties where it drops down. There's a low point between the two
Yeah.
properties. There's a high point on both sides, but then there's a low point
Point.
where they join together.
Okay. All right. Visual glare, property value noise, runoff, vernal pool. I think that's all right now. Mike had that. Let me ask the board. You have questions for the applicant?
Well, I have a comment. Some of the things that you answered, their concerns, the safety from the panels themselves. People have them on their houses, so they're generally regarded as safe. They're 10 feet from a living space if you have them on your roof. They make DC power, which doesn't make EMFs, so there shouldn't be a concern for electrical hazard.
It's less likely to be ripped off in a storm, though.
You can't, we can't.
That's
Sorry.
No, I'm just saying,
Sorry, Jennifer.
they're generally accepted as safe to be near people because.
But that might be a question for the applicant as far as what wind design are they constructed for?
So it's uplift.
Yes.
And I don't know do you have the wind load, Kirk? I don't have a wind load with me.
Maybe on here.
We can get that.
I do not.
But our foundations are actually, I mean, they're driven into the ground. They're actually better than a roof.
Are you, I don't want to take the board discussion.
No, go ahead.
Are you doing screw augers, or are you doing full pile concrete? What are you doing for?
Most likely it'll be screw augers.
Screw augers, okay.
We'll try pile, but it's, I mean, till you actually get in there and do the geotech, you don't know exactly what the
And just for the
percentage of each
public,
one it will
just
be.
for public knowledge, how deep do those augers typically go in the ground?
8 to 12 feet, depending on this. It really depends on the geotechnical that they run into. Yeah.
And in rock, how deep will they go? Still the same depth?
Yeah, sometimes they'll drill and actually pin it to the rock. Depends on what they're finding for rock. So if the pile drive that's the cheapest and most cost-effective way. That'll go in 6 to 8 feet with a pile, and then they'll do a pull test on it to ensure that it's getting the proper uplift load. If they do run into that rock, that's when they'll do screws or drill and screw. Yep. But it's really the construction company's call once they get in there and actually do some tests and see what they got for geotech.
Mr. Chair, do you want to, I mean, I know they deferred to the engineer as well for runoff discussion.
Yeah, not yet. I'm
Okay.
good, but thank you. Good. Do you have more, or is that it?
No, just the safety concern for the panels.
Yeah,
Right, and I would say too
Yeah,
that,
okay.
sorry.
Not right now.
Can you get me?
Maybe for later.
Sorry, my leg. Otherwise I'd
Need
help
more definition, Bob, that's all.
When you're talking about solar panels on a house, you're talking about putting 7 acres of solar panels behind my house. Within hundreds of
realize
feet
there's more.
of where I sleep, where my 3
I
children
realize.
sleep, where my mother-in-law, my mother sleeps,
Yeah.
where they play, so that's a big difference. A few solar panels versus 7 acres of panels.
Okay.
I won't say it isn't, but it shouldn't be. There's no need.
I'm sorry, we can't have side discussions. I know you would like to answer, but if you do have a question, I don't mind you asking me, and I can direct it, but I just can't have the side conversations.
My question was, blasting is not an option for any part of this project, correct?
Oh, I think that is correct. I haven't seen, yes, there's no blasting, just drilling.
I'm good. Heard plenty.
From Zoom.
Hold on to it if you want.
Well, my biggest concern, having walked out there and looked at it, was the visual buffer. It was really, really poor, but for what's planned. And I don't see any reason why we can't, and I know we don't have any enforcement on that. It's very subjective, but I don't know why we can't either suggest more berming between them with maybe 2 layers of, conifer trees that can be planted to start out maybe 6 to 8 feet high, and then will, over the years grow and reduce that visual impact. I mean, it is going to be very ugly. You can't deny it, and and I don't know that we're responsible for house values, but just from pure visual impact, it's really poor.
Chair, if I could. So they are in compliance with setbacks. I think
Right.
that's what you meant before, is they're in compliance with setbacks, but we do not have any firm requirement for a distance of buffer, but we do have within the site plan ordinance requirements for buffers. So that's under 310.60 buffers, and that also is necessary for compliance with visual assessment, which is under going back to the solar ordinance, we do and we can require some language or some more detail as to the visual assessment.
Okay. Where are you right now, Jim?
I'm going to try to find, under 309.27 solar energy systems. It's under D, visual impact assessment. There's 4 points to that. And number 4 is the one that probably we'd be looking at. Description of any proposed mitigation measures such as berms, landscaping screens and buffers, or low visibility materials that may be used to minimize potential visual impacts from the project. On mine, it's page 90 of 222.
I got it.
And I know a lot of this, the first few deal with historic sites, public views, but I think 4 we kind of put in there to address overall. And then that kind of pairs up with the site plan ordinance visual or buffers.
Visual description of property, identification, characteristics, type of extent. So, yeah, so we could, all right.
So, yes, I mean, doesn't it say that we can require submittal of a visual impact assessment?
Yes.
Yeah.
Those viewscape things like they did for the other solar farm.
Yeah, there it was from that one was so large, there was concerns about the impact from potentially the lake or from public ways. That was put in primarily for that purpose, so that we had concerns. We didn't want it to be like some of them you see on the side of the highway necessarily. If they were, they had to do an impact analysis to what that would mean.
Everybody in the room's already done an impact assessment.
No, but I think we'd have to, you'd have to provide us with some kind of assessment saying how you're minimizing potential visual impacts. And
8:25 p.m.
Yes, it is.
The watch tells me.
So I think to Kevin's point, there are some deficiencies in the rear buffer, and I think that came through during our site walk.
I agree.
And I think there are some things that the applicant could do to minimize that. I don't think we can necessarily take care of views from second-story viewpoints, but if we can do it at least from the ground or the first floor, I think we've accomplished more than what there is now. But that is up to the applicant, not to.
Right. And they're limited by space.
And they're limited by space. And then also, if we do put in berms or additional landscaping, we do need to make sure, because the land does undulate through there, that we do not impede any runoff from the properties coming into the site as well, or vice versa. But there may be combinations of things. He's mentioned possible doing things with fencing, but I do think there may be some opportunities. And I know you folks are planning on grubbing most of that site, right? So there will be some organic material potentially available to create a berm. I just don't know what you can fit based on how the proximity of where you've situated those arrays. I don't know what the actual, is it 20 feet we have back there between the arrays and the property line?
Yeah, 30.
30. So I don't know what we could fit in there for how high of a berm we could get, because we get a berm in there that gets us some elevation, and then to Kevin's point, if we can plant something in there to kind of fill the gaps from these people's homes.
Is a berm better looking? An organic berm?
Yeah. Pretty much. Doesn't take care of the noise in 302, but.
Well, we'll take care of some of it.
Yeah, might help.
Sorry.
Is it on?
No, you can't do that.
I mean, it's not this board to solve that problem, but we're just saying that we just
There won't be a huge amount of organic material there. You're only talking 6 acres of land, so.
Right, but I'm not talking a 20-foot berm either, we're talking, but again, I don't know what can fit in there, you go up, you go down, how high can you get within 30 feet, and try to keep as much of the existing vegetation as well.
Right.
Because, I mean, what we're seeing, but I think the problem is that what vegetation is there is tall canopy, and underneath there's nothing. You can see right straight through. So I think it's the, in between the top of that canopy of those trees and to the ground, that 20, 30 feet that everybody's just wide open.
I mean, I can go taller fence.
You have the green monster.
Well, I mean, I'm talking 10 feet. I'm not talking 20.
May I ask a question?
what happens to the rest of the living creatures in this
Ma'am,
town?
we've closed the public hearing. I can't have and I appreciate your concern. I'll try to give you an opportunity.
Fair.
Yeah. All right, so.
And I just kind of want to get a little Kirk's feedback as far as what the DEP will be reviewing on both on the vernal pools and the stormwater. If we just get a little feedback on that, I think that might be helpful.
Kirk, did you catch that?
I did. So we'll be filing a NERPA permit application. I believe it's a PBR, which is a permit by rule. And we will be filing that for the cutting of the canopy within the critical terrestrial habitat, which is that 250-foot buffer from the edges of the vernal pools. We will be filing a full stormwater permit application where we'll have to meet the basic standards, which is erosion control during construction. And we'll also have to meet the general standards where we have to meet 95% of the treatment of 95% of the impervious area and 85% of the developed area. And that's the intentions of the soil filters. So those will be the 2 DEP applications that we have to file. And we also have to we'll file a self-verification application to Army Corps because we'll have to fill this small wetland right here in order to construct the road.
Kirk, you have some grading activities. On a plan, you have a gray shaded area. I assume that's your habitat disturbed area?
That is correct.
And within that, you have some grading. Does that still fall under the PBR?
Yes.
Okay. And just one other question. I know with the DEP, they have, I don't know what the correct word is, but they have a different connotation as far as impervious goes. The solar panels themselves, they do not count against impervious. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep. So what will happen is actually the solar field is not considered developed area under the DEP Chapter 500 as long as the field area is maintained as a meadow and is not mowed more than 2 times per year.
Bob, I have another question on, and back to the visual impact. Since it is part of the ordinance, can we vote to require that impact statement?
Oh, sure, yes.
Can I do that right now? Can I move that?
You're making a motion?
Yes, you can make a motion.
Yeah, okay, I move that we require a visual impact assessment.
As part of the project.
As part of the, accepting, yeah.
Part of the project application. Is there a second? Nobody wants to go along. Okay. Then there's a discussion. What do you hope for? Kevin? What do you hope that it will?
Well, I'm just going on. So, if the applicant doesn't want to change the impact that he's doing and putting, X size fence in or X number of trees or whatever, if we require this impact and the board doesn't like the impact or doesn't accept the impact, does that mean that we can vote saying we don't accept the impact and you have to change it?
I see.
I'm just wondering how the legality of this works.
Yeah, I mean, I have to go back now and look. It's 3.
We haven't reached that point yet where the applicant is not willing to modify.
No, I'm just wondering how,
okay.
I'm just trying to see, it's...
Because it's not worth requiring it if it has no meaning.
I mean, I don't... So the way the wording, the planning board may require the submittal of a visual impact assessment. It's not the way it's worded in the ordinance, it's not a requirement, but the board may require. So I think, to Kevin's point, it has to be a board discussion and a board determination if you want that visual assessment.
That's right.
At this point, I'm not sure it's worth moving that direction. Is that,
Yeah, when we were out there, you kind of could
You could see it.
what was going to be the impact.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, and I guess the question would be is if, I think the board has stated it has a concern about that, and if the applicant hasn't responded or doesn't respond to that,
That's when we would.
then you could fall back and say, okay, we want more information, we do want a visual assessment. But I think right now you've got a void that needs to be addressed, either through them coming back with a more detailed plan, or if you do not get that, then you could utilize the visual assessment to.
okay, does that sound okay with you, Kevin?
Yeah, that sounds fine. I'm just wondering how we can address this in a better manner.
Right.
Well, and it may be in the applicant's benefit to follow that course
do it now.
to cover, cover you know what, but.
I'm open to compromise for a solution versus more effort on an assessment.
Well, and
may
I
don't know what
think-
that's going to even is.
Well, I think the main point of that is that we'd be looking for either a landscape architect or a professional to provide a design appropriate screening of that location, I think is what we're looking for. I can't speak for everybody on the board, but I think that's what I'm
A
hearing.
better design on a lot of other projects that we've done.
Right.
That address those, visual impacts directly.
And you got to remember, you're not just in the solar farm, you're still in the site plan ordinance, which it's required, it can be required within that as well.
Hey, Alex.
Hey, Bob. What's up?
Well, I mean, I think Dave has made a kind of a point that's kind of resonated with me, and that is, I'm not sure when we did this ordinance that we were actually, anticipating that the project itself would pretty much go across a continual property line. Like it would, a house is going to be the 50-foot buffer, but it's not going to be the 50-foot buffer across the whole house. It's, so, and I know it's an approved, that we allow it, and I have no problems with solar projects, and I also, for you, Dave, I also feel very strongly that a developer should be able to develop his property the way he wants to develop it, as long as within accordance with the ordinance. I mean, that's what the ordinances are for. And to the, ma'am, to what you were saying about that, yes, there's animals and wildlife and all that, but somebody, as I was telling Mark the other day, somebody much smarter than me told me if land is undeveloped, it's going to get developed. So whether or not how it's developed is really what the planning board is kind of designed to do. So there's going to be development in that, and there's going to be impact to water runoff. There's going to be the impact to the trees and to the animals. It's going to happen. It happened when you're.
Doesn't mean you should.
Well, that's true, but I mean, it was done when your house was built. It was done when my house was built.
That's the
right.
point I was trying to make. Yeah.
So it's like, if my house wasn't built, there'd be a lot of animals that would be very happy. So.
At some point, you maybe stop,
Well.
or you just go right along.
It's always easy to say you stop after we're here. So at any rate, so back to you, Alex. So I'm not, was that really is that really something that we kind of, if we don't move towards increasing the buffer, I think that we're putting an undue hardship onto the homeowners, particularly that we can say it's not an industrial, and it's non-industrial, but it is being almost designed as a warehouse, where if it was being designed as a warehouse, we wouldn't allow it.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm trying to reconcile those two things. And I guess, Dave, one of the things that probably would make it a lot easier is if, you pulled that project back from the property line. But I know that you're under constraints as to how much you can do that, as far as still making the project viable.
Absolutely.
So that's where, so just to be honest with you, that's where I stand right now. I'm not, I'm not really all for, I'm not really all against, but I'm concerned enough that I would, I would not like to have to call myself to vote right now.
So the thing is that reading this solar ordinance, we do not have a specific buffer requirement.
No,
we have a setback requirement, which.
And is that our fault? I think, it is a relatively new. This is only our third time. That's normally how we change things as we go through this and find out, this really doesn't work.
And where it's allowed in the residential zone, the only thing you could change, and not for this application because this is locked in.
Right.
The only thing you could change in the future is if it's from a residence, you could have a different setback from a lot of residents possibly.
Yep.
Or you could have a minimal setback from any residential structure or something. But I don't know what that would be. Would it be 100 feet, which would still maybe be inadequate still? Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they want 1.2 miles. So, we would never have, there wouldn't be one in the state of Maine, most likely, if we had that. So, there's got to be compromises and things like that. But it's a learning experience every time we do one of these. And I think across the state of Maine, it's a learning experience still.
Right.
I think you'd ask the DEP, they're still learning about their pitfalls from some of their decisions too. So, and I know, Dave, you work in both industries, wind and solar, and you've seen changes to these things all the
Like everything, it evolves, right? All planning evolves.
Yep.
Unfortunately, right now, we're subject to these ordinances for us.
Well,
Mayor, I have a question. Is it okay for me to ask a question?
Yes, it would be welcome.
Okay. Early on, Dave and I met with Alec and Jim, and initially, the SES ordinance allowed solar development within the shoreland zone, and then the state came back and said that was not allowable. We have room to the west, and we purposely pulled the project outside of that shoreland zone. Is a waiver to bring in some of that shoreland zone into play and pull it away from the people's property line, is that possible, or is that just due to state law, we can't do it?
I don't think you can.
That's a great question.
Yeah,
I knew we'd come back to you, Alex.
I appreciate the sentiment, but I don't think it's possible. The only thing we could try to do is we could try to amend the shoreline zoning ordinance to say that, it's not allowed within 250 feet, which is the state's Chapter 1000, limitations for shoreline zoning, since we are more strict with the 600 foot, which is why we're in this situation. But that's a risk, and it would take 6 months before we would have an answer on that. So
And that would have to go to town meeting.
it'd have to go to town meeting vote, has to then be approved by DEP. So you're looking at August before we'd have an answer.
And the reason I bring that up, that is one of the reasons why we are tucked up into that northwest corner of the parcel.
Understood.
Yeah.
And that's not a board waiverable lot, right?
No.
That's not.
No.
Yeah, we couldn't do that on Port Harbor Marine.
Yeah.
No, it's a state statute, and we can't be less restrictive than the state.
Well, the state isn't, state's 250, right?
State's 250.
State's 250, we're 600. That's why he's saying you could.
But they don't care. They don't care that we are more strict. They're just saying this is your shoreline zoning ordinance. They're not allowed in shoreline.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, makes sense. All right,
Can I ask a question? You said it wasn't considered industrial, and it was authorized.
It
use for
needs to be
that
on, Mike.
zone? Oh, is it not on? I don't know.
Okay, go ahead, Trey.
You said that it wasn't considered industrial there, even though it's rural residential. But can you explain why that is, that it's not considered commercial or industrial if it's a for-profit solar farm?
Because solar farms are an allowed use in the residential zone. It's the use. The use is allowed.
Right, but it's not personal use, it's for-profit.
Doesn't matter. The use is allowed. Doesn't matter if it's commercial or residential, the use is allowed in the zone.
Okay. And then they also said that they were going to be drilling, so what about
No, they're just posting. They just post.
Oh, okay. 'Cause
Just drilling.
again,
Not
the radon with the granite shelf.
All right, Dave, did you have a question? Go ahead. Yeah, the podium would be best.
Well, you seem to be indicating that you were interested in, after this project, that there would probably be a need for changing ordinances so that maybe there was more buffer before property lines and things like that, knowing that this is going to become an issue and going to become a more prevalent thing, knowing that there's significant interest in property value. I would imagine being the project that gets in before that theoretical change would go on, you're looking, if this were to go through, you're looking at us bearing the brunt of a property value that we perceive and a problem that we've already perceived, that everyone in the room has perceived, is this is too close. And this is going to impact property values. Precedent.
We hear you, Dave.
Yeah, thank you.
Questions from you guys? You all? Kevin, you have any other questions?
No.
All right, well, I think we, Jim, do you have?
No, the only thing I just wanted to bring up, which was in my report, was this does need state, federal permits, and this board really, in the past, has not acted until we've had those permits or acknowledgement that those permits are pending approval. I know in the other solar farm, there was some PUC regulations that, got in the way. I don't think they've asked for anything special, so I know we discussed it at the site walk, but we might just want to make it on the public record that we will be looking for those documents as part of our final approval, or before this board can vote.
Will vote.
Yes. I said it, but
You said it. I'll wrap it up. Mark, do you have something that you want to say?
I don't.
All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep, one second. Go ahead, Wayne.
So I just wanted to bring up that you should have received my most recent memo in the packet. Been working with the applicant, and the memo addresses items that should be on the final plan, which I feel very confident that will take place based on our conversations.
Wayne, can you explain this this piping that you want circular surrounding the project?
Yeah, so what it is it allows the truck to be at the water tank, the cistern on site, and pump into this piping and have outlets, 4 outlets around the site for fire suppression, so that we can hook hoses up to it and do fire suppression.
So are these like hydrants that from underground piping, or?
They're just standpipes, I think.
Standpipes?
It's a standpipes.
Like the dry hydrant.
It's a dry standpipe system.
So
So
dry
it's just a
hydrant.
pipe that we pump water into with an outlet at different points around the facility that we can take our hoses, hook up to that, and then fight fire.
On the inside of the fence?
And
On the inside
I'm
of the
sorry,
fence
what's
this
that?
is going?
yeah,
Okay.
those connections will be inside, and we'll have gates in the immediate area so that if we need to go outside, we can do that.
Okay.
And this is all in lieu of that fire lane encompassing the whole site to give us fire suppression access. This is a way to accomplish the same thing without all that roadway.
Perfect. All right. Go ahead.
As we talk about the idea of the DEP coming involved in this, is there a way to request a assessment of how it impacts Thomas Pond, the stream running down my property line, the watershed issues?
Yes.
That's exclusively what DEP is looking at. They're filing a stormwater permit, so they're looking at all the runoff that would be coming from the project site, analyzing those study points where it leaves the site. And Kirk, do you have to address phosphorus because this is in Thomas Pond watershed, or is it just general?
It's general because this didn't trigger site law project. The phosphorus standard would come into play if we had 3 acres of impervious area. We're under 3 acres.
But a lot of the procedures that you'd use for, in this case, it would be total suspended solids is what they would be looking for. A lot of the measures they use for that are similar to what you treat for phosphorus removal. So that's usually the nutrient you're worried about getting into a lake watershed because of algae blooms and things like that. So that is all being reviewed by the state at this point. And that's why this board will wait until it has that finding from the state before it concludes.
And so the state would be looking at that there is a stream running down from my property into Thomas Pond.
They'll be looking at all the water leaving this property.
No, I don't think so. They're only going to look at that stream if there's water runoff going into his vernal pool.
Correct, but if there's any runoff from this site getting into
Right,
that stream,
correct.
they'll be looking at that.
I just
And
didn't
they will
want to-
also be looking at their documentation for the wetlands and the vernal pools as there's impacts.
So it would be on, you stated earlier that we would have the opportunity to have that body of water behind my house reinvestigated. Like we could contact the Department of Environmental Protection.
You can
and make them aware
you can make them aware of that. I believe the applicant did do a vernal pool study. Is that correct, Kirk?
That is correct. We did the, Dave retained watershed resource consultants out of Bar Harbor, and they visited the site during the spring, counted the egg masses on all pools that were on the property. And as you guys had mentioned, this designation of significant depends on the amount of egg masses and the activity with those pools of whether or not they're significant. And that particular pool didn't turn out to be significant.
At that moment.
That information, that report will not only be reviewed by DEP, the actual IF&W, we report all of those reports and studies to IF&W, and IF&W reviews and accepts that data or not.
Inland Fisheries and Wildlife.
Right. It just seems like a designation that water runs from that one pool into the lake would be something significantly noted. You know, that one of the pools in that area runs down and is a direct watershed into the lake seems like something that should be significantly noted.
Yeah, but it doesn't qualify as a significant.
Not a
vernal
significant.
pool. I know what you're saying,
pool,
but
but as a designation, when you're thinking about a site use and what impact it potentially could have, that the water leaves that pool, even if it's not a significant pool, if it leaves there and runs directly into the lake, that should...
It gets treated no different than any of the other pools on that property because runoff could get into any of those pools, and IF&W...
Not runoff from the... Sorry to interrupt you. Not runoff... I'm not concerned about runoff from the site, necessarily the particulates or whatever of the construction, but those issues like were there ever fire suppression done, that one of the pools, the water from one of the pools leaves the pool and leaves that property and goes down directly into Thomas Pond.
I believe all the water from the site, not just on your property, but all the water from the site eventually gets to Thomas Pond. Is that correct?
Filtered through the ground and whatever.
Well, I think there's discharge points. Is that correct, Kirk? There's other points of concentration that leave the property?
That is correct.
Not just yours. There's other points. So all of it has to be reviewed by DEP.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Dave, would you kind of jump up there just so, going forward? As Jim mentioned, we will not give final approval on the project until all of the DEP and the whole state and all those regulations are in, and anything that's unique to the solar, that solar wants. I would like to give you some guidance going forward. I think that's kind of fair, and I answer any of your questions that you may have about going forward. I am very hesitant to talk for the board. I do know one of the members that's not here is also concerned about the buffer and the visual impact. You've heard Kevin. I am also down on that list. So I think that somehow in some sort of redesign, we would like to see some methodology that you're going to do that's going to mitigate both increase that buffer, maybe help a little bit with the noise, with the light, but certainly help with the noise in some manner. Is that?
Increase the buffer density.
You agree? And what's that? What?
Increase the buffer density.
And increase the buffer density, right?
As opposed to moving.
Yes, yeah, either any, I mean, I don't want to design the project. It's up to you. If you want to, if you're going to put in old trees back in there, I mean, whatever you're going to do, that would be something, we're going to be interested in seeing that. What, is there any other specific things that we are interested in seeing?
I think to your point, keep it natural, not a huge, fence like a golf, like a.
Yeah, we're not, yeah.
Stuff like that.
We're not looking for a 30-foot cyclone fence.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I agree completely with that. We just don't want a higher fence. We
Right.
want something natural.
Right.
That's going to, and that would be particularly those back properties. I think you've got it, the project itself is decently buffered from the Youngs. Are the Youngs here by any chance? No, okay. All right, what else do we need?
Whatever the board.
Of all our public hearings, and believe me, I've been here for a lot of public hearings, you guys are by far the nicest.
Oh, yeah.
The most polite.
Well-researched.
Well-researched.
Very impressive.
That any group we have ever had. And so thank you. I very much appreciate that. And, well, we had to have you here, you see.
Trying to boost your ego. We had a choice.
There you go.
We'll be back after we've received all those other permits, including PUC, which actually I already have, but, and then I'll reach out to the neighbors as well.
Okay, it might behoove you to come back, though, before that point with, so that we can see how that redesign is going to look and whether or not it's going to work.
Well, that's a good point, because if it changes my DEP application.
Exactly. So you do...
You could come back at any point for a continuation, basically.
Yeah, and we'll table tonight. But I think you've got, I know our deadline for next meeting actually closes tomorrow, but I think Sandy said, I think you bribed her and said you could have another week. Or she said,
We'll see.
as long as we got it in.
It's Christmas. We're gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So at any rate, so whenever you want to do that, but I think it would be better to come back to the board one more time.
Makes sense.
And at that point, I mean, depending upon what it all looks like, depending upon how it looks, we could give you, we could accept it with a conditional approval, and then you could come back on the time after that to with all your permits.
Okay, sounds good.
And as far as you guys, you will not be formally invited to the next one because the public hearing is already over. But it will not be advertised.
Well, it would be advertised.
It will be advertised, but not advertised as a public hearing.
So in January?
Probably
No.
January.
It'd probably be February
Yeah.
at the earliest. Either February or what do you think, Dave? February, March?
Yeah, February's probably realistic.
February.
Oh, okay, that might be out of town. But would it be on the?
It's on the Zoom.
On the website?
It'll be on the website.
Yep.
Yep.
On that right-hand side?
Yep.
Zoom.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, actually, I'll be out of town too.
Chair, I'd like to also let the abutters know that during the DEP permitting process, they will be getting green cards and they will be given the opportunity to comment to the DEP as well. So they've got another opportunity to chime in with their concerns with the state during the state permitting.
Thank you.
All right. We need a motion to table.
So moved.
Second. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Tabled.
You want to give them a few minutes just to...
Yes. Stretch.
Yeah, that was a long one.
I'm getting a Charlie horse. My screen.
You add to list.
Yeah. Plug my mouth.
Bob, I'm going to be off headset for 30 seconds.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Is there anybody in particular could reach out to that might be able to speak to the group or not?
Thank you. Yeah, at least I'm walking now. I'm off the knee scooter. So that's good. Oh, that's
Yep,
good.
yep,
That's
yep.
good. That's Dave's
Very well spoken group, though, huh? Pretty wild. It's refreshing to see something like that.
Educated. They took some time to do some research.
Yeah.
They did.
Nice.
They did.
Most of it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's what you find on the internet, right?
It was basic boilerplate information.
The thing you could
Give
say
it
about
time
this
to-
site is it's squeezed into a little corner. And they're going to see it. And it's,
So you guys want to talk about ordinances real quick? 9 o'clock, we can do this quick.
Let's do it.
I don't have a whole lot, so.
Okay.
Well, I do,
You
sort
do.
of. but-
You do sort of.
Yeah.
Not a long list, but a lot of, could be some work in there.
So number 2, tiny homes, we're going to skip for now because I don't really have anything substantial to update you on. Next month, we'll have something for that. Same with number 3, we can skip that. The big thing for me is number 4, which was what we discussed last time, the accessory dwelling units. After spending some time on it, first thing, well, not necessarily the first thing that we should do, but at some point in the next month, I'd like to have the attorney just go through. He's been pretty heavily involved in the LD 2003, so he can go through and just make sure that we are still in compliance with that. I did speak with the shoreline zoning coordinator for our portion of the state, and I proposed to him an idea. I think we kind of loosely talked about it last time. Currently in the shoreline zone, you need twice the space standards to do an accessory apartment. So if you're on the Cape, that's a 3-acre minimum. You need 6 acres to do an apartment, with your house. That is a requirement because of Chapter 1000 shoreline zoning says that you need that. Like we talked about earlier, we have the 600-foot shoreline zone. On the Cape, it's actually in places 1,500, 2,000 feet from the water. So I asked the state if they would be supportive of us allowing apartments beyond 250 feet from the water that don't need twice the space standards. So essentially, if you're beyond 250 and you want to do an apartment, you don't need to have twice the land, twice the shore frontage, twice the road frontage.
can it be detached or attached?
Detached or attached, yep, that would be fine. And Jeff, obviously it's not an official decision, but he said that he would expect that would be no issue because it's beyond the 250 state regulated area. So I did a little bit more research with the company that does our GIS work and kind of asked them loosely to input some of these numbers to give me an idea of how many lots are currently capable in the shoreland zone of supporting a second unit. And between LRR1 and LRR2, which is the Cape and everything not on the Cape, there was about 20 lots that we could get apartments on now that met the requirements of today. By changing that, and some of these aren't 100% accurate, but it's pretty close. By changing that, the number goes up to around 80. So it's an increase of over 50 new units, which isn't as many as I expected, to be honest. But
Like a big number to me.
it's
Doesn't.
No.
yeah. I mean, if you think about, I mean, that's not all on the Cape. A good portion of it probably is the Cape. If you were to do, 40 more units, that's 40 more septic systems, and maybe 80 more trips per day, or maybe more than that. But so it's an impact, but I don't know that it's necessarily off the charts, I guess. So that's an option. There's a lot of community support for that. I will tell you that. I mean, I think the ladies here last time, that's one thing that they're interested in. There is a lot of people interested in that. And then the other thing that gets brought up to me a lot is increasing the size, and we talked about that a little bit last time, from 700 to a larger number, not necessarily 1,000. I just threw that on there as that's what has been mentioned before, 800, 900. And then the last thing, there's no definition in our ordinance for living space. It just says in there, living space excluding stairways. But it doesn't say exactly what living space is. And hasn't really been an issue yet, although it does come up. I just issued a permit last week where they calculated the 700 square feet and they took out they did interior measurements instead of exterior measurements. So they took out the wall framing, and that's how they calculated. And I was okay with that because it's the living space.
Yep.
So I think we probably should try to define that. So I guess those four things I'm kind of looking, I'd like to bring something back next month.
And that living space, that's living space floor area, correct? Not space, because we've done this before.
It doesn't say. It just
With
says
volume,
living space.
and we've got into knee walls, attics, and it gets to be crazy.
So I'd love some feedback on that so we could
I
maybe.
would think you'd want to have it to be floor space.
Yes,
Floor space.
definitely.
Yeah.
Floor space even, or storage, like you just said.
Living floor space.
Well, I think you can define it down from there, but I don't think you want to do it
You can have a
space.
knee wall and a closet. So
Right.
the closet is living storage space. But
Yeah,
the
and I
wall's
think you
not.
could, I
So
think you could
that's-
exclude storage areas, stairwells,
Yeah.
things like
Yep.
that, but you could just stick to,
Yeah, so currently I'll allow people, like, let's say they do a garage and they put an apartment above it, and they have a stairway come up, and they're over the 700 because of the size of the garage. We allow them to do kind of their enclosed apartment area, that's 700 square feet, and then if they want to do another room on the other side of the hall that has storage, and maybe it's a utility room, and maybe the apartment uses that, maybe they put a laundry room in there or something, but it's separate from that unit, we allow that to fly.
I'm just wondering if there's any architectural or any planner dictionary terms that you could use for what is a living space? Is it a kitchen? Is it a bedroom? Is it a living room? You know,
Yeah, I mean,
what gets
NFPA
excluded basically because
may have something, Wayne, I'm not sure, but
yeah,
building
because
code
it's a
might.
laundry room.
We can
Yeah.
refer
What is
to
a
that,
laundry
you
room?
know, that reference.
Yeah.
It's a room.
Yeah.
Yep.
What do you guys think about the size? I know we've gone back and forth the last couple of
700
years.
came from.
No clue.
Well, I think it was kind of from the state. I think it was the in-law apartment.
Right, that's where ours came from.
And I think that originally came from the state, but I know that you go in different communities, that's anywhere from 500 to his point 1,000. It's all over the place now. But
So
I don't.
My take on that is, why do you limit it other than if it's, kitchens and bathrooms, which impact the septic? Why are we limiting the square footage of somebody's living room or somebody's bedroom or,
Yeah, I think-
I really don't get that at all.
I think the only thing that's there is it has to be subordinate
to the principal structure.
principal structure.
Yeah.
So I think that's your
And that
criteria.
is because of,
It's an accessory, not principal.
so why don't you make that, then you just call the other one the principal and the other one's the accessory. I just don't, I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense.
No, and I don't know if we all disagree with you or not, but that was the principle, that was the reason that accessory, it has to be subordinate and less than the principal structure.
Well, accessory means attached to, or, I mean, you can, a lot of verbiages, you know, you can say what accessory means, but I don't see why we're limiting somebody's rights to have a bigger room.
Well, the question is if you have a, so if you had I'll use 4,000. Say you had a 3,000 square foot home, does that mean somebody could put a 2,999 square foot, accessory
As long as
structure?
they only had one bathroom.
And I think that's
and one
why they
kitchen,
went.
Sure.
I think that's why
Why not?
originally they went
Well,
lower, so that we didn't get into situated.
You're getting
Or two
around
homes.
subdividing.
Right.
You're avoiding a subdivision.
Right, and I think that's why we went to the 7. I think it's why originally with the in-law apartment, it got to 700, because it was like, that's enough to have a kitchen and a bedroom, one bedroom, it was a nominal size. And I
Yeah,
think
I
we
get
did,
that,
we
one
wanted to
bedroom, one
avoid
kitchen, one
people.
bathroom.
I think we wanted to avoid people getting, basically trying to duplicate the home for rental purposes.
Right.
I mean, I think, in my opinion, just from the actual enforcement side, I do think it's easier having a square footage instead of just saying subordinate to the principal structure.
That, or you just limit the bedrooms, because what we're really worried about is the bedroom.
Yeah, I mean, that opens the door for, I think, us to be a little bit less efficient with information. Explaining that to people, okay, well, what does that mean? Or, having to calculate the size of the principal dwelling to figure out how big the accessory can be. It's just more steps in the process. It is easier, I think, to just say, this is the size. But I understand that that's not
Or could
ideal.
you say a percentage of the?
A percentage, but then we still got to figure out how big the house is.
I get you,
So we're going off tax rates, which aren't always accurate.
We're back down that rabbit hole.
I don't see anything wrong with using a square footage for an accessory dwelling. We're not building another home.
Yeah.
We're building accessory dwelling.
Or unit.
Right?
Or unit.
Or a unit.
Yeah.
I think if we're expanding on what living space is and we're giving a number, I think that's going to make it more efficient for us.
I
agree.
I don't know if there's objected to 1,000 feet. I don't know if there's a happy space.
It's just 1,000 feet's a weird space for a living space, that's all. It seems a little small, 1,200 and 200 additional square feet. If we're gonna discount closets and storage,
There you
then
go.
1,000's okay. But if it's 1,000 overall, that's
I mean,
barely.
Mark,
I agree with that. I
from
think
building
1,200 is a good one, too.
House, what do you think?
1,250 is a pretty standard small house.
There you go.
You take the
1,250.
dimensions, you take
Yeah.
dimensions of 30 by 40, right? That's 1,200 square
Yeah.
feet.
I was gonna say, and
That
that's
would
where
be
they
two
got
bedrooms.
that's where they got the 700 from. The standard garage is 25 by 28, that's 700 square feet.
Yeah.
So it came from the garage above it.
Above the garage, yeah.
Yep.
You guys would make a lot of people very happy with 1,250.
Well, do we want to prevent two-bedroom houses, three-bedroom units? I mean,
Put a max bedrooms.
In the accessory dwelling unit, is there a restriction on that?
Ooh, you know what? I don't know if we can. You're right, because we can't. So we can't be more with this LD 2003 thing. We can't be more strict than the state, and I don't think the state has put any limit of bedrooms. So let me look at that. That's a good question. I can do some research on that.
'Cause that was one of the major concerns was septic.
Yeah.
Have to meet the septic system has to be able to carry the additional.
Yeah.
You remember the early version, they wanted to just allow another bedroom without any expansion of the septic.
Yeah. So what do we think about the shoreland thing? Is that a bridge you think we should cross?
Well, I guess my only thing is, like you dealt with tonight, I don't know, you start chopping up the shoreland zone, and I don't know if it opens up a precedent for other uses trying to do the same thing.
I think it's I mean, I kind of play both sides because it's your freedom to do what you want with your land always, 100% of the time, but with the, with rentals and whatnot, you're going to see a lot of this. You're going to see a lot, and then you're going to have to worry about that. I mean,
Yeah.
they're not, grandma and grandpa aren't living in this thing.
these are
It's not.
rentals.
They're rentals.
They're rentals for
Absolutely.
profit.
Yeah.
That's profit. That's all this
Yeah.
is. So if you're going to maximize that in all 80 people, what's the chances? 0. But 20% of that, you're gonna get a run on it. So that's you have to just define, refine
Yeah.
the definition a little more. You can't control what the use is. It's your property, So if we allow it, we open it up to more, then just know that there's going to be more rentals and more
Yeah.
traffic and more everything else.
Yep.
Right, but I think
Absolutely.
rentals is an okay use because people need housing, but not short-term rentals, not the.
That's what I'm referring
know.
to, those short-term rentals, yeah.
And you
That's
can't
Okay, yeah,
restrict it.
definitely not short-term rentals,
Yeah,
but
you're gonna
regular
get into
rentals where
anything
people are
that's
going to
on-
actually
anything
live there for
that
their
has a view
permanent
of the
residence,
lake.
yeah.
It's going to be an Airbnb. It has the potential to be an Airbnb.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And that's what it's going to turn into, so.
And unless we want to go
It's just-
down that, I know Casco's got an ordinance in place now for short-term rental.
Yeah, but who's going to enforce it? It's,
Well,
And that's what I mean, it's that slippery slope.
Right.
That's all.
Oh, yeah.
That's, I mean, we want to open up and have, you
But
know,
all they
homes for
did
people,
in
but-
that community was that basically they licensed, if you do a short-term, you had to license it. So if there were numerous complaints, they could regulate you not getting a license for the following year if you had a lot of, loud instances and things like that. It really wasn't an ordinance, it's a licensing.
And then it's an enforcement nightmare.
But it's an enforcing
just-
nightmare for him and for the sheriff and for
Yeah,
whomever,
it's-
I mean, the whole purpose of the legislation was to get a place for people to actually live.
Right. But that's what we
So-
fight in the lakeside communities is we fight occupancy of units for short-term profit versus permanent
Yes.
affordable housing.
And that's all this is going to be,
and it's
unfortunately.
not for someone to live, it's for someone to vacation.
That's right.
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 That's, and that is that is a staffing issue no matter what. If we don't do anything, it's a staffing issue, with short-term rentals. So, I mean, we're in a tourism
Exactly.
heavy area.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
And regardless, I mean, so
Yeah.
I don't know. So I don't know if that plays. The only thing I had a concern is just like you saw tonight. All of a sudden, if we start saying, and I don't have a problem either way, but I'm just saying it could open up the door for other uses to say, well, can I get, can we put solar farms within 250 feet of well, you allow residents, affordable housing.
Right.
And I'm not saying they're all going to dive into that, but I've always thought too that we should just have 250-foot shoreline zoning, but the community feels differently.
Except for me.
Yeah.
It just, it just make it, and the fact that all of Raymond Cape is, like you said, it's some places it's 1,500 feet.
Yeah, 2,000 feet.
So maybe it does make sense. It's just, I don't know. I mean, we're trying to attack this affordable housing, and we've got other things in this ordinance too that we're trying to attack to open up more affordable opportunities. Going through his list.
I mean, you guys don't need to decide that tonight.
Affordable housing should be more in the commercial district anyway, where, I mean, you're going to need, true affordable housing is going to need transportation.
Well, we're going to get there in a few minutes.
We're getting there. Hold on.
I got that one teed up here. Maybe if you guys want, what we can do is we can kind of put this together, and it's a really, I think, drafting-wise, it's a pretty easy change. It's just adding a section to the accessory dwelling unit section in the shoreline zone. So I can talk to the attorney, ask about the bedrooms thing, and kind of expand on this a little bit more for next month. And then maybe next month is kind of like the drop dead decision time for that.
Yep.
Because we still got a little bit of time, if that's okay. Does that sound all right?
Yep, that sounds fine.
Okay.
Because we have to do the public hearing by March.
March, yeah. I mean, we could push it too, but March is kind of the goal.
We could have a separate meeting. We've done that in the past.
Yep.
So I did get two more, I guess, requests for consideration for you guys in the last month. Both of them are included here. The first one's from Derek Ray. He owns a lot that he just purchased directly across from the Raymond Beach boat launch. And it's a lot that's used for, the town actually has a parking easement on it. It's really only used during the fishing derby, I think, across the street from the boat launch. But it goes up to Main Street. It's got the pipeline and a CMP easement. There's a lot going on. But essentially what he has asked for is if you guys would consider, he's talked to a bunch of the neighbors on the left side of Main Street if you're headed towards the fire department. That's zoned a little funky. There's spots that are village, and then some of it's shoreline. It's actually LR2, which is the 3-acre minimum. So you got these small village lots that are in shoreland, and in spots they're 900, 800 feet from the water. So they're beyond the 600. So his request to you guys is to look into possibly moving that shoreland zone back to 600 and kind of making that village in there like it used to be at one point in time. I don't know the history of why some of these lots were all, and there was a large wetland there, of course, until the 50s when the new 302 went through. But it looks like resource protection is further down. So that's kind of what his request is. It's not just him. There's a few owners on that side of the street that have asked this before. Because there are certain restrictions that they fall under with shoreline zoning that some other village lots don't have to kind of deal with, and they're beyond the 600. So that's that one.
He would access that lot to those lots from 302?
Possibly. He hasn't really figured that out. You know what? He's looking at possibly selling some of it to the abutter and maybe putting a single family on it or something. But
Some of that doesn't even look buildable. It looks like it's still swamp in there.
it's pretty wet in there, yeah. Yeah.
I can't visualize exactly where he's talking about. If it's farther to the west, you know, the land goes up and it gets better.
Yeah, there's a spot to the west. It's all been surveyed. They did a wetland delineation. There's really 2 upland spots on the lot.
He wants a zone change, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't go through the...
A map amendment to change that line across that entire section. So not just his lot, but all of those lots along that stretch.
So if it was his, it'd be a map amendment, but it's all of them, so it's its own change.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
So it's got to go through the board, right?
Well, yeah, it would have to go through the process, you know, go start with you guys, select board, town meeting. Yeah. I just don't know the reasoning as to why that... I mean, the ordinance says that where possible to use roads or lot lines when setting the zones. So it's possible they just set that all to Main Street and just left it, but there were some that were not included in that, if you look at the map.
So yeah, I think just having the map to understand where we're talking about would be helpful.
Yeah.
And if he had any...
Yeah, I mean, this just came in today, so...
And if he had any wetland information, I guess I'll overlay that on the map plan.
So we do have it. We have that wetland stuff. So, I mean, I can bring that next month if you guys want.
Well, I think it'd be helpful if they could overlay that onto the actual zoning map. So we could see the zoning,
See where
zoning and wetlands, where so we have a comparison to...
And I can ask if Derek will come to the next meeting, too, to kind of have that conversation with you guys directly, too.
Which property did he buy? Do you know?
Right across from the boat launch. It used to be St. Joe's.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And then Nate Hertel bought it, and he's the one who sold it to Derek. Okay, so the next one came from the Cargars. They're the new owners of the White Pines Motel on 302. Essentially, what they are asking for, the email doesn't really summarize it too well, but I did have a conversation with them. And what they are asking for is for you guys to consider possibly allowing residential uses in the commercial district. We do allow for a residential apartment, I guess, above on the second floor of a commercial use. That's our only allowed residential use.
Yeah.
So what they would like is essentially multifamily residential to be allowed in commercial, because they feel as though, you know, there's sidewalks and it makes sense to have, you know, higher density residential uses near commercial shopping areas and, you know, stuff like that.
Would they use the same building, or would they just demolish it?
That's the thought here. I think they would like to use the motel and turn it into a multiplex, but you know, there's other things we'd have to look at there, density and all sorts of stuff. But the first hurdle is it's not even allowed right now.
Yeah.
Do we allow, we must allow lodging and hotel?
We do allow hotels in commercial, yeah. So that's an allowed use.
One of the things that he and I had a conversation with today was, you know, I think we have a very defined and small commercial district, for one thing. But the idea was that we were kind of contemplating is, do we want to have a zone either on the ends of the commercial zone or a transition zone between the commercial zone and the residential zone that could be mixed use, where you could put affordable housing, a higher density for multiplex, to your point, so that they could have pedestrian connectivity to the commercial uses.
Yep.
And that kind of gets into another one that we had here as well, the last one.
That makes sense.
to maybe have something where if you were in a mixed zone, you could have a higher density or a density bonus if you're doing it for affordable purposes. Very similar to what I think was in place when they did the senior bonus housing. And maybe that can be also part of this, is that the senior housing could also be included with that, because if you have senior housing and people need services to get elderly, they would have those connections in close proximity to the services.
Which is in line with what our.
Which is
most
in
recent
line
comp
with
plan
what
exactly
the
they
comp
want.
plan people
Right.
were looking for. And
Yeah.
I know they're looking for a certain percentage of housing to.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you can't just do that overnight. It's going to have to be small bites of the apple. But this might be a conversation, and maybe it doesn't get done this time, but I think it's something that might have some merit. I don't know
That's a
what
good
that,
idea.
I don't know what the, I don't know if we'd want to take a look to see what properties are even available behind the commercial. And, you know, obviously if you go behind the commercial on 302 to the lakeside, now you're into shoreline zoning. So, I mean, you're kind of limiting it to the inland side, but it might be something that, you know, I mean, you could have, I say a mixed zone because you could still have single family, but if you were proposing affordable housing or senior housing, you'd be allowed to give them a higher density. And then most likely in those zones too, you'd have water or access to
And
water.
maybe someday sewer down the road in 50 years, or who knows.
Right.
You know, it is a TIF district, so there is possibility down the road we could do some town improvements down that corridor. So, I mean, Jim and I can work on that and kind of see if that's something. Obviously, it needs to be in line with the comp plan, which is might be the issue.
Yeah.
So it might be something that time-wise doesn't work out for this year, but we might be able to stack it.
Well, I'm wondering
get the
too,
comp plan to-
should we, if we have even an inkling of interest to do something like that, should we maybe have a conversation with the comp committee?
But actually, we already talked about that.
There you go.
So is that something on the table?
What's that?
Is that on the table for discussion, you think, to?
Yeah, I think anything would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's-
And we're
let's-
actually talking about meeting with the planning board and the select board.
Yes, yeah, I did hear that. Is that going to be sometime soon?
I think so,
Okay. January, February?
probably.
Okay.
Mr. General over
No, we didn't. No, we didn't.
So it would be nice to have
It's
something.
sort of in the talking
You
stage.
know, just a rough sketch as to what we were thinking,
Yeah.
and how it would work for that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I think it makes sense because if you look at our downtown, I think the vision, of course, at one point was for it to be commercial, retail type uses. And I mean, that sort of works, but I mean, Raymond's more of a village, which is kind of a mix of everything. You know, we're not like Wyndham, which is
But you might
heavy
push it-
commercial.
If you had a higher density and you had more pedestrian traffic down there, you might push it back to what the comp plan originally wanted. I don't know. It obviously doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a year. It takes a decade or two to happen, but it doesn't happen if you don't have some kind of vision or plan.
Right.
Okay. Well, we can work on that a little bit. The density bonus thing.
Yep. That's what the other flip side of that would be too, even in, I think we talked a little bit about that when they were here, conservation cluster type developments. If we were, again, if they had a certain percentage of affordable housing within that, say 20% or 10%,
Yep.
could there be a bonus for an additional unit or something?
Right.
As an incentive to promote affordable housing. But, I mean, I don't even know off the top of my head, do you know what constitutes affordable housing? Most developers I talk to say it's an oxymoron because you can't build affordable housing.
It changes.
Yeah, it changes, but is it 250, 270, something like that now?
Yeah. I think it changes based on.
Household income.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's right here if you want to read it.
Well,
It's 2 paragraphs.
But what would be the nominal price range of a dwelling to fall into that category?
It says, for rental houses, a development in which a household's income does not exceed 80% of the
Right.
median income for the area. I don't know, how would you?
But doesn't Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, don't they kind of have a county by county?
Probably do.
I would think so.
I think they have a county line where basically if you fall below this, you're into affordable housing. I mean, your loans and everything are kind of based on that too.
I'm sure there's a chart.
Yeah. And I think it's established by county in the state of Maine, I think.
Like percentage of the market.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of factors that go into that. But I just know from talking, you have too, from most developers, there's just no profit in it if they, following the land use regulations that they have now, because the price of land, unless they have high density, it's almost impossible to build affordable housing under those statutes.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to have a higher density to make even a possibility of making. And I think that's what corporations like Avesta face. They have to find cheap land to make the numbers work, because materials, construction, labor are so high, it just consumes the whole value.
Portland requires affordable units with any major building. My son-in-law built in a large condominium, and he had it provided.
Yeah, he had to,
part of his approval.
That must be weird. You got somebody with $1 million over here, you know.
They're multi-million-dollar or million-plus units, and then we got a little one.
Right.
I can reach out to, is it North Star?
Yep.
I'm sure they have that information. They're
yeah,
doing
I
a
think
study
they do.
for the county, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah. So I can contact them and see.
Yeah,
Kate Burge.
Yeah, Kate. I've talked with her before, yeah.
I was gonna say Ben, but probably.
Yeah, Kate's the one that's been doing the study for the county.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
So I can talk to her and see what there is out there for info. And I mean, I think it's helpful to try and get it in now.
Yeah.
We've
You know,
talked
I mean, we
about
look
it.
at commercial, and maybe we also look at transition zones around village districts too, possibly, because I mean, the village districts are closer to town center.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at like what's his name? Tim just did Honey Hill.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, those are a little higher end, but you can see even, you know, he has a big tract of land, so he's able to put them in a condensed area. But even if you get something like that, where you've got 2 or 3 units, you know, you
That
could,
would have been a good opportunity to have some in there. That's
exactly.
That's all I got.
Do you folks have anything for ordinances, or Bob, do you want to add a buffer to the solar?
Do we want to do that now? Is that something you want to do?
I think yes. I think it is. I think we should kind of revise that.
I did add
don't
it
think
to
we
my
thought
list,
of
so-
that. Unfortunately, I don't think we thought of that scenario. We were thinking large tracts of land.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and this one, and I think, you know, you see the way solar's going, this might be an attractive way for people to kind of, because the big ones aren't getting built.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah,
a
I
lot
don't,
of-
and I don't think we
There's a ton of
actually.
them permitted
Yeah.
across the state, and some of them are just,
I mean, we have more strict buffering requirements for shipping containers.
I was going to bring that up, and I just didn't. I don't want to bring it up technically. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you. But you're gonna get them going.
no, you had to wind them up.
But I'm like, come on, what are we
Yeah.
doing?
So I think we should look at that,
Good.
and maybe use
Just
that as,
consistency.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
All right, I'll do that.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Done.
Aye.
Adjourned.